here.
Sure. Carolyn. 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 How many different ones do we have so far? How many plans do we have? So we're supposed to be 3 or 4. Yeah. But I need somebody to put me on the camera. That's all. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Right. Yeah. So I think it's on. It's on the what I sent you. No. Oh, yeah. But I sent you. Only you're asking for the names of the panelists and speakers. I sent you the names on it.
I'll just connect it. Okay, so you got 50 bits on it.
Okay. Could you? Thank you, Carol. So, yeah. So right now it's focused on the podium, but as the panelist starts to speak, you just span to where they are. Okay? That's pretty much it. All right? So we always focus at the center. We start at here, right? And then as the panelist starts to come up and they start to speak, you just focus on it. Okay? All right? And this right here is to widen or to take it out, zoom in, zoom out. Okay? So it's her name. Yeah. We'll keep it that way. That's it. Yeah. Thank you. 1, 2. 1, 2, testing 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2, testing 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing 1, 2. 1, 2. 1,
Good.
2, testing 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, testing. 1, 2, testing 1, 2. 1, 2, testing 1, 2. 1, 2, testing 1, 2. Yeah, you all right? No, I was looking for you because I brought her up because I didn't see the kid. I was looking for you. That's why I brought the student up because I didn't see him. Oh, you have the camera? So, I'm sorry. Just tell me. I thought you guys. You said you want to be here, but I didn't know. Okay. Yeah, I would prefer to have somebody behind the camera at the way to do it. For the time being. Oh, there is.
Hello and good morning, everyone. We are finally going to start. If we can have you take your seats, please.
I didn't see you guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, and kids of all ages, thank you so much. I love doing things on Island Time. This is wonderful. So, good morning and welcome to the Winter Summit, the USVI 2023 SEDI-CASE Summit. We're excited to be here, and there are a number of people from all over the place. As the morning and the day unfolds, we're going to get to know each other a lot better. But right now, I'd like to give a special thanks to the USVI EDA, the CEO in the back of the room. They've got a wonderful goodie bag for you. The CEO is Wayne Biggs. We also have with us Selena Morris, who is the Director of Marketing, and Margarita Benjamin, the Managing Director for Economic Development. These are key folks that if you haven't met before, you will want to meet. We also want to thank the early arrivals, Senator Donna Fred Gregory. Senator Gregory, if you can just wave your hand. There we are. And Senator Novell Francis Jr. And he stepped out of the room, I believe, but you'll see him shortly. Just wanted to acknowledge him. Also, we want to thank you from traveling far and wide. And we do have some special guests in the audience as well. We have some students. We have, first of all, Deshauna Samuel Biggs. She's the FBLA advisor for Eulalie R. Rivera pre through 8th grade school. Can you please stand up, Mrs. Biggs, please, in the back of the room? And she has these young students who will become the next level of entrepreneurs and executives. So we're really pleased to have them here learning from us as we're all learning from each other. So at this time, I'd like to invite to the podium the founder and CEO of SEDI-CASE, Anthony Weeks, please.
All right, I think I'm going to use this microphone. All right, thank you so much, Carolyn, for always doing an incredible job. Thank you so much for being here this morning. And this has been a 16-year journey why we are here this morning. It was literally back in 2007, we huddled at the University of Virgin Islands for 2 days. We brought all private and public sector stakeholders together to tackle what was then the issue, stagnation of the U.S. Virgin Islands economy. I say that because the St. Thomas district is predominantly tourism. 65 to 70% of our GDP is tourism. St. Croix has always been an industrial market. Back then, we had the benefit of a $6 billion a year GDP because of the refinery. Manufacturing was robust. We had employed thousands of jobs. But a lot has changed since then. The backdrop of where we are. We've seen a shrunken economy right now. The GDP is at $4.4 billion. We have a total workforce of about 35,000 people. Of that 35,000 people, 700 manufacturing jobs. 700 manufacturing jobs. The government has always historically been the largest employer in the economy. Even when the refinery was in existence and operational, employed thousands of jobs. Now we see a situation where we cannot grow and diversify and maintain a prosperous economy unless we start to attract new industries, new capital, create new businesses, and create new jobs. The days of us being a small island economy where we compete with each other, St. Thomas, St. Croix, duplicating the same thing, we cannot continue to go down that path. Yes, St. Croix can be a tourist destination in a very specific niche market. And when I say niche, I'm talking about where we have the opportunity where we've literally partnered with industry partners. Most of the players, the folks that are here today, are founders and CEOs of their respective companies. We have signed memorandum of understanding with our partners in key markets coming from New England all the way down to South Florida. And over the next couple of days, you'll hear from those partners, and of course this morning as well. But I would be remiss if I don't acknowledge my sponsors. I want to thank Port Hamilton Refinery and Transportation, Dave Johnson, the majority stakeholder of Port Hamilton. Thank you very much, David. I want to thank the EDA. The EDA is one of our signature sponsors. Every time I call on the EDA, they're always there. I've had a long-standing relationship with Wayne Biggs, and he's always been very supportive. I'm still trying to get him to Taiwan. He hasn't been to Taiwan yet. But as you can see, he was in New York at the New York Stock Exchange. I also want to thank Caravel Hotel Casino. I also want to thank especially Senate President Novell Francis. I got to give him kudos because he worked long and hard to establish the free trade zone. That's going to be important because if we are going to attract international companies, foreign companies, the report just came out recently that in 2022, total foreign direct investment in Latin America and the Caribbean is $225 billion. How much of that do you think the Virgin Islands have gotten in terms of FDIs? Of the $225 billion of foreign direct investment, how much of that we've gotten, U.S. Virgin Islands? That's because, and this is why Senator Novell Francis and the creation of the International Trade and Commerce Initiative around the free trade zone, that changes everything for us. We now have the ability to provide incentive to companies that are foreign and international to come to the U.S. Virgin Islands and do business. And the EDA is the admin for that program. The refinery started with a tanker truck, oil truck, when Leon Hess was alive, back in the 60s. Is it 60s or 50s? They had almost a 50-year run. Leon Hess took that refinery from what it was to $11 billion enterprise here in St. Croix. That refinery was instrumental for producing annually $19 billion in sales. And now we have Dave Johnson, who now has the responsibility of reopening that refinery. You're going to hear from him and the other panelists, but we want to thank you for your commitment, as always, on that. I also want to thank Petromar International. Petromar International is also an important player in this process. Why? Because another major industry, I talk about manufacturing, but the industrial industry, the other industry is Port STX. Port STX will speak to the repositioning, repurposing of the South Shore. And so Port STX is the shipyard, the St. Croix shipyard is part of the Port SDX redevelopment project for the South Shore. And so one of the panelists, Craig, is with us, and I want to thank Petromar for their support and sponsorship, and you'll hear a lot about that. I don't think I've left anyone out. I think, RT Park, we're going to be at RT Park tomorrow on the technology side of things. One of the persons that you're going to hear from tomorrow is the CIO of NSU, Nova Southeastern University. We just signed our country agreement between SEDI-CASE and NSU, specifically to help partner on the medical school simulator, to help bring that to the next level, if you will. And today we have in the audience, you will hear from her later, Dr. Barbara Brown. Dr. Barbara Brown is one of the co-founder of MBD, Mind Body Doctors. Yes, thank you. And that's going to be important because we have economic leakage taking flight every single year. Virgin Islanders are leaving the territory for special medical services. They're going to Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, South Baptist. We now have an opportunity where we are now partnering with these network of doctors, very successful doctors. They have combined between the three doctors, female doctors, they have over 100,000 clients. Why that's important? Because it's going to be a reciprocal relationship. No longer where we are losing dollars. Yes, our people need medical attention, but there will be a reciprocal relationship because these doctors are going to help develop our health and wellness and medical industry and working in concert with the University of Virgin Islands Medical School Simulator. So that's very important. I think what I'm going to stop there because I want to be able to start to invite the panelists to come up to speak. I have to my right a long-standing friend and colleague. He is the CEO for the Argentinian operation for Zentepi Resources, a publicly traded Australian company. And the reason why this is important is because when Matthew got chosen to head up the Argentinian operation, first thing he did was send me the press release and said, Anthony, I'm now heading up this Australian company. Zentepi Resources is a exploration and drilling company for lithium. And if you understand what that means, when Henry Ford built the Model T, go back in the past, when Henry Ford made Model T and made our US auto industry what it is today, we are at the infancy, the genesis of the electric vehicle era. Lithium is going to play a major role, whether it's lithium ion or solid state batteries. Lithium is one of the minerals, metal minerals that goes into the manufacturing of batteries. And so Matthew's here, and we're going to tour the refinery. We're going to meet with David because the refinery now becomes a prime site for where the western section of the refinery have been offline for a while. We're now looking at that part of the refinery to now integrate lithium processing, whether it's the refining process of lithium or battery assembly as well. But most important, the part I really like the most, because I introduced it back in 2007, was the creation of our capital market system, the Virgin Islands Stock Exchange, back in 2007. And why that's important. There are 5 mechanisms that make a stock exchange what it is. And one of them is for us to create our own niche product. And so having the ability to have a partnership with Zentepi, we now have the opportunity to create a lithium commodities exchange. That's very important. And so you'll hear some more from Matthew on that as well. So Matthew, I'm going to invite you to come up and be part of the panel discussion. Also, I'm going to invite Senator Novel Francis. I'm going to invite Wayne Biggs, the CEO of the EDA, Dave Johnson, Randy, Yeah, take a seat anywhere, yes. But before we start the panel discussion, I hope I'm not forgetting anyone. I'm going to call up the president and CEO of the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce. He's not just any regular Joe, by the way. He is one of the contenders. He just literally competed in the race for mayor of Harrison, New York. And so he took the time to be here with us, even though he's, obviously in the midst of that. When I called him, he was here. I want to call my good friend, Mark Jaffe, President and CEO of Greater New York Chamber of Commerce. So we use my opportunity to just, for a couple of minutes, to share with the folks about the organization and why we brought you here exactly. When we talked about our project in Newburgh, New York, the New York International Plaza at Stewart International Airport, the developer, my colleague, founding CEO of IC Development Group, retired Colonel John Clendenin, he's here. You'll hear from him on the transportation panel, but we believe, an opportunity to ease the congestion of JFK, LaGuardia, and Newark Airport by connecting Henry Rolson Airport with Stewart International Airport, specifically in the area of air freight. Yes, both airports, passenger airlift, but both airports, non-existent in terms of air freight. And this is a unique opportunity for us as an island territory to now build a bridge between ourselves and the U.S. Tri-State area to be able to be that hub in the region for airlift, and we'll hear about that a little later. Mark, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your organization, please.
Good morning, everybody. I am Mark Jaffe from New York, the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce. I've lived there my whole life. It's good to see Anthony and Carolyn and the whole team here from SEDI-CASE and the economic development agencies do this very important summit. And we're so proud to be here. I met a lot of great leaders, see a lot of great potential. And with the partners in this room, we could take the base of what I've seen in the last 18 hours since I landed at the airport. We see such a commonality of entrepreneurship, family values, hard work, pride on this island that is the largest landmass, and it's time to bring it back to full productivity. Throughout the world, we're in a global crisis right now. We're challenging democracy on a scale that I've never seen in my lifetime, and I'm not the youngest person in the room. Randy Piers and I from the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce were talking about congestion pricing earlier. It's a new program that we're trying to get passed, and it's very difficult in any political body. I was talking to a couple of these senators to get and build consensus. So if you find a senator that can get and build consensus, you need to champion that person, because that's what it takes to get things done. We need to build consensus on how to reduce traffic volume, global warming, so that when we create these new jobs for the future, for our children, for the next generation, they have a good planet and their minds and their bodies are healthy. So I'm so proud, the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce is so proud to be here today to help build on the legacy of startups, entrepreneurship, and good values. And I know that this summit is a good beginning, and we look forward to reducing the traffic together and promoting the investment opportunities and the partnerships between all of the world, the United States, New York, my home, and as Anthony said, very close to my heart is this huge project that will alleviate traffic and create opportunity for all of us. So thank you, Anthony.
Thank you. Okay, I also failed to mention, we are live on television. So while the folks are in this room, thank you so much for being here. We are live literally throughout, right now we're streaming live on Apple TV, Roku, Android TV, and what's the other one? Fire TV. We're also streaming live on the internet, but most important, we are speaking to the people of the United States Virgin Islands. We're live on WSCX Bloomberg. So the people of the Virgin Islands will have, and I'm really delighted to see the young people in the audience. So they're hearing and seeing, witnessing firsthand the process. And thank you so much for bringing them here, LaShawn, for having them here with us as well. So we're live, and I want to thank the viewing and listening audience for tuning in and to be able to listen to this conversation, because what is at stake is we need a private sector that is more engaging, more proactive, more involved with the process of helping to literally mold and shape what we believe is going to be necessary to diversify this economy. And so the gentlemen on the panel today are going to give a perspective in different areas as to where that is. This is not hypothesis. This is not theory. I spent the last 16 years researching and developing how we accomplish that. We have signed the difference between then and now, what we didn't have back then, and I will name later, at least a half a dozen things that will determine the success going forward. I'm going to serve as a moderator for this panel, and I'm going to give the honor of thanking the Senate President for not only being part of this, but also being a sponsor. Thank you so much, Senator Nova Francis. But like I said, he is the sponsor of the law that exists now called the Free Trade Zone. He worked long and hard to make that happen. And today we're here to talk about that law, the role of government and doing business with the government. And we have the EDA here, and we have the Senate President. And we also have former Senate President Donna Fred Gregory in the audience. So please, I would like to be able for you to be involved as well. If you don't mind, if you can come up. And for those who are going to speak, the podium is going to be part of that process. Senator, could you give us real quickly, what was the motivation? What was the inspiration behind why you felt it was necessary to create the Free Trade Zone?
Thank you very much, Anthony, and good morning to everyone. And of course, I want to recognize my Senate colleague, Senator Donna Fred Gregory, who is the finance chair and the former Senate President as well. My name is Novell Francis Jr., and I'm currently the Senate President of the 35th Legislature of the Virgin Islands, and a 5-time elected senator. I'm serving my 5th term, and during my efforts to diversify our economy, because the reason why I got into the legislative body in the first place was back in 2012 when Hovensa closed down and the devastation that was felt here on the island of St. Croix. I mean, all of the air was sucked out of us, and we really was severely impacted. And at that critical time, we had to then determine how best to move our economy forward. There was a lot of concern, certainly a lot of business closure. A lot of people left the territory at that time and left St. Croix, of course, for a better way of life. And, just severely impacting the islands. Most of our businesses then became, consumed with what was happening, because we talk about close to perhaps $200 to $300 million at the time that just evaporated from our economy at that given time. So as a former police commissioner who had then retired from the Virgin Islands Police Department, I decided to put my hat in the ring to run for the Senate. And once I got in there, I endeavored to certainly diversify our economy, because we certainly don't want to continue to put all our eggs in one basket. We saw what happened again when Hovensa pulled out. I mean, we just went flatlined. So we contemplated what would be that next move. And there was a number of initiatives that was deployed by my colleagues and I, but certainly I worked feverishly in establishing the South Shore Enterprise Zone along with my colleagues to make that happen. And it took almost 5 years. It took almost 5 years for us to develop the South Shore Enterprise Zone legislation, a lot of heavy lifting, We got the delegate to Congress involved in that. Certainly there was issues in respect to the Jones Act that I'm sure that we'll be hearing a lot about today, as well as, this whole issue of putting in place legislation that would allow for us to be able to bring in, materials, goods and supplies, equipment under the custom duties without having to pay for those at the time in custom duties until such time as it was operated within the enterprise zone, and then go back out to the wider United States and beyond. So a tremendous amount of work had gone into the legislation, and finally we're able to move the legislation forward with the approval back in the 33rd legislature. The governor signed off on it, and certainly then we made it the responsibility of the EDA to establish the enterprise trade zone, which was another arsenal in the economic development initiatives, fighting ability to be able to attract investors and be able to attract and build our economy. In addition to providing the legislation, we also provided $1 million to the EDA for the purpose of marketing the South Shore Enterprise Zone. And there's some feasibility studies that's going on right now that I'm sure that Mr. Biggs will speak about at the opportune time. But we are very happy for the establishment of the South Shore Enterprise Zone, and basically what that will allow for is for light manufacturing, assembly, call centers, and warehousing. And what we believe that we have a trifecta, because the South Shore Enterprise Zone is right within the gates of Hovensa, or former Hovensa, which is now Port Hamilton, all the way down to Mannings Bay, right beyond the Betty's Hope area, which is right beyond the Port Authority's fence line. So anything that operates within that zone, again, provide for the South Shore Enterprise Zone, and there's a significant amount of benefits that's allowed within that trade zone. And this will attract jobs. Once we're able to establish the enterprise trade zone, we believe that we could improve in terms of our workforce. We could bring almost 1,200 jobs to St. Croix. So we're really interested in getting this South Shore Enterprise Zone up and running. We have had discussions with some of our large box suppliers, such as the Amazon, Walmart, and some others. And one of the critical needs that we have is warehousing. So we have some discussion in regards to being able to establish warehousing within the Port Authority. But we have a trifecta here. We have a deep water port over at the South Shore Enterprise Zone and at the Renaissance Park, as well as the EDA Industrial Park is right next door to that. We have the University of the Virgin Islands, and it just a Port Authority and everything, the airport. So there's really a trifecta within that specific area. So that's basically in a nutshell the South Shore Enterprise Zone, and I'll be available for any additional questions.
Thank you, Senator. I'm going to ask the CEO of the U.S. Virgin Islands Economic Development Authority to kind of piggyback, and the reason for that is because when we approached the Senator Noble Francis about what he did in the free trade zone, we told them that we believe one of the best model industry for the South Shore was a shipyard. The reason for that is because 14,000 vessels pass through this region every year. 14,000. You literally have a handful of, and I don't want to get ahead of these guys with transportation, you have a handful of dry docks and repair facility. We are in a unique position, and you're going to hear from individuals why we say we're unique, in terms of why when we bring this online, it's going to be important. Spoke to Senator Noble Francis, said what he said. He said there's $1 million for market and technical assistance in the program to be able to support the initial feasibility study to determine the viability of this. Met with CEO of the EDA. Once I understood that the role of the EDA was to administer this program, it made sense because there are several enterprise zone programs that they're responsible for. Wayne, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about that, please.
Yeah, Wayne Biggs Jr. I'm the CEO of the Virgin Islands Economic Development Authority. And we did work very closely with Senator Francis in reference to creating that free trade zone area. And there was a lot of humps and bumps, and like you said, it took almost 5 years for us to get through that, even to call it a free trade zone. So that's why we ended up calling it the South Shore Trade Zone, because the federal government had the nomenclature on free trade zone. So we had to modify that and change that somewhat. But yeah, when we got the funding from the Senate, the funding was not only to market the area, but also could be used for technical expertise. So we did start a feasibility study in regard to creating a shipyard here within the territory. And as Anthony indicated, one of the reasons for doing that was because the quantity of ships that pass through here, but also because of the difficulty of getting into shipyard. Shipyard is all about timing. It's difficult to get into shipyards, particularly for larger ships. And the only Coast Guard approved areas, you have to go up to the US mainland or some of the other ports that have those shipyards. So we thought it would be a good bridge to have a shipyard here in the territory. We are in the process of that feasibility study, and somewhere in the middle of Q1, we should have the results of that feasibility study here, and we'll share, of course, with the public. We've already visited other shipyards. We've had the group here, was here about 2 weeks ago, looking at the assets that are here and what's available and how we can convert those. So they're doing a complete study, and we're using a UK company. I don't want to call their name right now, but they are definitely in that realm. They do shipyard and feasibility studies and creating shipyards throughout the world. So that company, like I said, should have their final report into us in the beginning of Q1. We think it gives us the ability to diversify the economy somewhat. But that being said, there's also many other things we're looking at for the South Shore Trade Zone. Warehouse space. We think we have the opportunity to really create a transshipment port here. Technically, we do transshipment as it is. St. Thomas sort of transships to the Western Caribbean, St. Croix does to the Eastern Caribbean. So Tropical and Crawley kind of centralizes their freight here, and then they use smaller ships and stuff to move it throughout the rest of the Caribbean. If you look at our geographic location, we're sort of right in the middle of the chain of Caribbean islands, but we're about 1,000 miles from South America, 1,000 miles from Central America, and about 1,400 miles from North America. So we're positioned beautifully, really, to have a shipyard and to do transshipment and a variety of other things. And as Senator Francis has also indicated, I mean, we've been talking about some big box stores in reference to distribution networks. If you're trying to open markets in Latin America, Central America, or the Caribbean, you can be on U.S. soil here under U.S. laws. So your IP is protected and IP intellectual property is protected. But also, if there's any questions in reference to jurisdiction, you have U.S. jurisdictional rights. And for people who are doing business here, no passport is required. So it's easy transportation in and out of the territory. Another advantage that Senator Francis sort of moved over quickly was the Jones Act. We are exempt from the Jones Act, and that also gives us an advantage in reference to shipping and moving ships to and from foreign ports and U.S. ports. So a variety of different things. Again, we should have that study completed in somewhere around the middle of Q1 2024. And we would definitely share that with the public, and hopefully we can establish that shipyard and build from there. So we're also looking at a hotel potentially for the South Shore Trade Zone. We're talking with a developer now in reference to creating 110 keys business hotel at the airport, or let me say across from the airport. Because when I say at the airport, everybody thinks at the old Lyman Inn, and we're not going to be at the Lyman Inn. It's actually going to be across the airport, 110 keys. He's already done that feasibility study. He's already done the food and beverage study. He already has a flag, and there's some financing. So we anticipate that that's going to start in the very near future here on St. Croix also. And we're looking forward to really building another hotel here on St. Croix. We're in the process of doing one on St. Thomas on the dock, which is the first hotel that's being built, I think, in St. Thomas in about 30 years. And St. Croix now, hopefully, we'll have one that's being built, a new hotel also, which will be the first in about 30 years. So things look good. Things are bright. The EDC program continues to increase as far as businesses coming into the territory. We continue to fund small businesses through the Economic Development Bank. And definitely our community planning is working well. As you know, we have town plans for Christiansted, for Frederickstead, and we have community plans really for the Savant Down Street area and the Garden Street Up Street area. And those community plans led us to create Vision 2040. And Vision 2040 is really an economic plan for the territory. And you can get a copy of that plan at usvi2040.com. And it's that 20-year vision that has 8 aspirational goals, but also identifies 8 industry sectors that definitely have growth potential and we see as the future for the Virgin Islands. So I encourage everybody to take a look at Vision 2040. It was done as a community plan through surveys, town halls, meeting with residents here in the territory and Virgin Islanders and the diaspora. So it is the people's plan. It's not the EDA's plan. It's not the governor's plan. It's not the legislature's plan. It is the people's plan where we collated all the information we gathered and created that plan. It's a fairly large plan. I think it's about 268 pages, but I would recommend that you read the executive summary and the call for action, which is volume 6. We're very proud of the plan, and it's probably one of the better projects that I've been involved in my career. Really happy that that's moving forward. And all our sister agencies are now adopting that plan and planning for the future in reference to Vision 2040. So we see education looking at that plan and say, how do we educate our workforce? We see the Department of Labor doing the same thing, and many of our other sister agencies also. So it does provide sort of a blueprint that should we follow. I think the potential for growth and diversification and success in the future is good for the Virgin Islands.
For that, Wayne. You touch a lot of key points. The governor's not in the room, but I'm also the official special economic envoy to Taiwan and the Asia Pacific region. And when I discussed the idea of building a shipyard, I sat down with the governor and said, Governor, I think this would be a good thing for the U.S. Virgin Islands economy, specifically for St. Croix as well. And the governor is one of the big cheerleaders of the shipyard. He gave his blessings, and obviously after meeting with Senate President Nolan Francis, Wayne Biggs, meeting with the governor because he believes in the blue economy, which is the ocean economy. And perfect timing. The chairman of the Virgin Islands Port Authority just walked in. He's going to be part of the transportation discussion. But thank you so much for that. New York is in the room. Why is that important? When you think of us being the largest economy in the world, New York is one of the country's largest economy. California, Texas, Florida. New York has, 22 million people, guys, if I'm not mistaken? But New York is also, as my good friend and working with former mayor, I haven't seen him over here. Anyway, it'll come back to me. He calls it the Great Mosaic. He said that, and the reason he said that is because when you go to New York, if you want to meet the world, if you've never been anywhere in the world, and you want to meet the world, you go to New York. New York, the tapestry of New York is incredible. New York is an international hub, and the two gentlemen who are the presidents and CEO of their respective Chamber of Commerce, like I said, we went to New York, the governor and myself signed the memorandum of understanding with both Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce. Why is that important? Because when we talk about critical mass and how we connect the U.S. Virgin Islands economy, New York is going to play a major role in that process. I want to thank you both, gentlemen, for the partnership and your commitment for being here. And so, Randy, why don't you tell folks a little bit about your
So I walk around. I'm from New York. We talk a lot with our hands. I like Anthony. I like to walk around a little bit. I think it was Mayor David Dinkins coined the phrase "Great Mosaic," and I think I'm speaking at lunch too, where I'm going to do a presentation on Brooklyn in particular. But just quickly, we'd be the 4th largest city in the United States if we were our own city. 2.8 million people. We're part of New York City, one of the 5 boroughs. That occurred in 1898 when we agreed to join New York City. 1.7 million New Yorkers are part of the Caribbean diaspora. I'm going to talk a little bit about that over lunch as well. But I also like to sort of upend I'm an economic developer by heart. So I like to not upend, but offer a different sort of twist to traditional conversations. And the story of Brooklyn's resurgence as a major, really now sort of an international area destination. It seems like almost every Gen Zer and millennial wants to do a tour of duty in Brooklyn, particularly young professionals. But we were an old industrial town that after World War II, speaking of shipyards, Brooklyn Navy Yard was producing Iowa-class battleships during World War II. But like most industrial cities, we had a rapid decline, and that caused a lot of disruption in terms of our economy. And we're not Manhattan in that we were more residential versus commercial. The finance sector is still headquartered in New York. Still an important sector, but New York City has diversified its economy both by industry but also by geography. And this is important because the story of Brooklyn's sort of resurgence is really a traditional Richard Florida story. For those of you who know Richard Florida, it's less about the real estate, the incentives, and the infrastructure, and it's more about attracting talent. Right? So I was speaking to, I think it's Richard, if I'm seeing correctly, the issue of workforce talent, the issue of workforce development, the issue of bringing in the creative class to a particular area can help transform an economy in a very different way than traditional economic development. And I say that because I think we're going to go visit tomorrow Tech Park and other things. And we talk about the diversification of economy. When you think about an area, a place, and Brooklyn's been about placemaking, when you think about a place, you start with your strategic advantages. And we have a lot of discussion about the geography and the importance of the ports in terms of shipping. But there are other strategic advantages, right? I think our EDA administrator was mentioning the fact that it's U.S. territory. The other thing is English language, right? And I contrast that a little bit with our friends from Puerto Rico. And I'm not going to, and I love Puerto Rico. My wife's from Puerto Rico, so, but English is the primary language here. And then obviously geography, but also quality of life and climate, right? So our economy through COVID has shifted rapidly. Many jobs and opportunities can be done remotely. Therefore, there are less impediments to attracting creative people to a place because they really could work, for the most part, from anywhere. And if you think about that, you take all your other advantages, the ones we just mentioned, especially quality of life, especially weather, especially geography, and you have a mix, I think, and I don't want to presume to know every aspect of U.S. Virgin Islands and what the advantages are, but I think you have a opportunity to sort of recreate on a different scale that sort of Richard Florida model, right? Let's just even start with the diaspora. 1.7 million people from the Caribbean live in New York, most of them in Brooklyn. The largest West Indian Day parade in the world, 2 million people along Eastern Parkway. So you also have, as Anthony talks about a lot, potential investment capital that can get involved in that type of economic development strategy as well. Look, what you got to think about though, because it's almost like building on spec, right? You got to think about, okay, if we truly want to bring in more people, the creative economy, and get that jump started, we gotta need someplace to live. They need certain amenities. But these are things that, in the scheme of things, are much easier to sort of invest in than even larger scale projects. And remember, once they're here, they start their own businesses. They they go to colleges and universities. They partake in the philanthropic aspects of a community, right? Like these are the things that are sort of the other types of benefits of when you could employ that type of strategy. So it is just kind of a thought, an extension of a diversification strategy. And it's something that, I think we can borrow some lessons from the story of Brooklyn. I mean, Brooklyn is now a very different place. I know we've got some folks who are from Brooklyn, who went to school in Brooklyn. They live here now. You know what I'm talking about, and John, right? And it's a very different place than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. The Brooklyn I grew up in was very different than the Brooklyn of today. There's new people, there's new capital, there's new businesses, and a lot of that was driven by repurposing industrial space, by branding, right? It was a branding exercise. When Brooklyn was seen as dangerous, right? Dangerous became edgy, then it became hip, right? See how that sort of just transformation and how we talked about it has helped transform, right? So now, you've got artists and cultural community. You still have a very strong immigrant base, and that's part of the advantage as well. And there's a lot of elements that go into it, but it is this more traditional, it's this less traditional sort of reliance on incentives and real estate infrastructure, but creating the conditions for live, work, and play, with work now being less of an impediment because you could do it anywhere in the world. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
So much for that, Randy. Now, when we talk about the Virgin Islands, New York relationship, it's coined VNICE. And VNICE is the Virgin Islands New York Cooperative Exchange. This was necessary because when we were hosted by Mayor Eric Adams at the New York Stock Exchange, we met with the leadership, the co-chairman of the New York Stock Exchange, the CEO of the New York Stock Exchange. And when we did our presentation at the New York Stock Exchange, we talked about some secret sauce that we have. So when we said what we said, we noticed it piqued some interest. So back then in 2007, when I introduced the Virgin Islands Stock Exchange, we didn't have that relationship. Going forward now, we now have an opportunity to partner with the New York Stock Exchange to position ourselves to become an emerging capital market system. And the reason I say that is because these two gentlemen that I'm going to have speak next, they come from the financial, if you will, background. But in particular, Matthew Beam is the former CEO of the European Financial Group. He headed up the Uruguay operation for EFG. And if anybody knows the Latin America economy and the Caribbean economy from a financial perspective, capital markets, et cetera, this man does. And the reason why it's important, one of the best kept secret, the reason why the entire continent of South America has high speed is because of Frederick St. Croix. There are 3 rings that control 75% of the internet traffic up and down the Eastern Corridor into the Caribbean. Global Cross is built it first, Level 3 came in, then CenturyLink came in after that, okay? And we now have an opportunity to be able to use technology, use that infrastructure, and create a sector within technology. And our good friend and the CEO of Jason is going to talk about that later as well tomorrow. But what's important, one of the other secret sauce, the U.S. Virgin Islands is 100% hub zone. The Virgin Islands is 100% hub zone. Why is that important? When the federal government spend their money, 2 to 3% of federal dollars go into hub zones. We have not taken advantage of that. We have no hub zone activities currently in Virgin Islands. And we're going to hear by virtue of us building a shipyard, when the Department of Defense, the military, okay, the Navy, Coast Guard, when they need their ships repaired, by virtue of us having a shipyard and the federal government spending 2 to 3% of their dollars annually in hub zone, it puts us in a very interesting position. Okay? But getting back to Matthew Beam. Matthew Beam is an expert on the Latin America economy. He's advised top officials, ministers in South America. He's fluent in Spanish. And the fact that he's here is a testament to the fact that he loves St. Croix. He used to live here. And he wants to be able to do as much as he can to help St. Croix. And that's why he's here. I want to thank you, Matthew, for that. Why don't you share with the folks in the room and the listening viewing audience a little bit about who you are and your company, please.
Sure. So thank you, Anthony, for the invitation. I've known Anthony for 15 years now. We met here in St. Croix. I lived here in St. Croix from 2007 to 2010. And then I've lived in Miami. We kept in touch. And then I moved off to Southern South America, where, you know, it's pretty far away from here. But we always kept in touch. So over the past 15 years, what I've been doing is advising on, you know, as Anthony said, clients, individual clients, governments, you know, large families, corporations that we're looking to invest in not only projects in Latin America and the Caribbean, but also projects in other regions of the world, mostly in the United States and North America. So that's more or less my background. We did, you know, we've done a lot of analysis on, you know, how to structure, you know, investments, how to look at investments from a, you know, just from a feasibility standpoint. We've done direct investments, we've done portfolio investments, real estate. And so it's been an interesting journey. You know, when you look at different countries, when you look at different sectors, they're all different in some aspects, whether that's, you know, looking at things from, you know, a kind of a return on investment point of view, or what's, you know, what to look for in certain sectors. About a year ago, I kind of left the financial sector and I got into the energy sector, you know, renewable energies, as well as, you know, the mining sector, and so there's a lot of critical metals that are very present in Latin America and the Caribbean, whether that's nickel or manganese, or in my case, lithium. So it's projected that there's about half of the world's lithium reserves are in the region here, Latin America and the Caribbean. There's something called the lithium triangle, which is not really in significant production yet. So right now, lithium, for those of you who don't know, lithium is not only a critical metal for the EV, for electric vehicles, but it's also used today for, you know, obviously any rechargeable battery. So the technology's been around for quite a while, but only in the past 10 years has there been kind of a lithium boom, basically due to the EV sector. That's about, you know, so when it comes to lithium, right now, most lithium production comes from two countries, China and Australia. Okay, so those are countries that, you know, are the current producers, but it's projected that over the next 5 to 10 years, that Latin America, Caribbean, they have these significant reserves, about half of the world's reserves. They're not in production yet, but we hope to change that in the near future. There's a lot of talk on making the lithium industry more environmentally friendly through these new technologies, which are mostly coming from Silicon Valley. And so, I think it presents an interesting opportunity. There's been some, some federal government support last year through a couple of different acts that were passed by Congress and signed by the president that are making lithium particular very attractive for tax incentives, for investment incentives. And so, what we're trying to do is go from an exploration company to a production company within, the next several years. And, with Anthony, we talked about how we can leverage, the Virgin Islands, particularly St. Croix, in terms of, the advantages that St. Croix has, and they're very unique advantages. We've all talked about the fact that, it is the United States. There are these, they're not free trade zones, they're just trade zones, correct? You say free, right? So the trade zones in terms of creating some sort of a synergy with lithium production in, these South American countries in order to increase the value add chain, whether that's through, the refining of the raw lithium, or even battery assembly or battery production, to then be able to be exported to the United States. So right now, China is the dominant player by far in lithium batteries. Okay, and the United States understands that it has a lot of catch up to do. And so the fact that the U.S. Virgin Islands has these advantages, Anthony and I have talked about how we can use these advantages in order to help not only the lithium industry, but also the U.S. Virgin Islands economy. So that's why I'm here.
Excellent, excellent. In 2018, I served as the architect for the relationship between Taiwan and U.S. Virgin Islands. The Taiwanese diplomatic delegation is coming in today. They get here at about 2:30. They're going to be part of a formal ceremonial proclamation. They're going to go to the legislature. And the reason I'm telling you that is because we're going to open up our Invest U.S. Virgin Islands Trade and Investment Office in Taiwan. The Taiwanese government is a partner with us, helping to facilitate that process. So we're going from literally, remember I said, $225 billion of foreign direct investment has come through this region. We've gotten zero. With our partnership with the Taiwanese, with Argentina, and Xantepi is headquarters in Australia. I had the opportunity to meet the co-founder, one of the co-founder of Xantepi Resources. So from an international trade and commerce, we now have 3 major countries, Argentina, Taiwan, and Australia, as a partner to build an international trade and commerce ecosystem to align the U.S. Virgin Islands, particularly St. Croix, with the EV ecosystem. The next person I want to be able to introduce, he's going to play an important role in this process because he owns the asset and the infrastructure. What used to be one of the world's largest oil refineries is offline right now, but he's working hard to get it back online. But what I'm happy about is I've been really talking about why are we so focused on oil production? We have a massive asset. Why aren't we diversifying that asset? Why aren't we leveraging? I have this conversation with Senator Francis as well. So when David and I met, and I said, here's what the vision is we want to do, he said, I'm in. He said, let's partner. And so Xantepi Resource and SEDI have a signed MOU
for their commitment towards the process of developing an industry, but to connecting the U.S. Virgin Islands to now have to be part of that supply chain, that global supply chain, when it comes to building electronic vehicles. All of this is exciting news because we're no longer a one-trick pony and just relying on tourism, right? It's problematic. You're putting all your eggs in one basket. And we're going to hear from our transportation group later. But it's important that the refinery and the vision that David has for the refinery, I want to thank you for seeing and understanding that the purpose of going down a different road. And if you can tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what so I guess giving them a high 35,000 feet overview of the refinery and why you did what you did.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. My name is David Johnson. Listen, this is a very unusual and very unbelievable story about how I'm sitting right here and I am, essentially the majority owner of one of the largest oil refineries in the world. My father was in the U.S. Navy. I grew up all up and down the East Coast, Navy brat, lived on different military bases. Family's not wealthy. I did not inherit anything. Everything that I have, I worked for. Kind of on a fluke, I came to St. Croix in 2009 to go to a wedding and said, man, this is a nice place. The people are nice. And I heard about the Economic Development Authority program. And the primary business that I had at that time was management consulting and analytics for consumer lending banks and other companies that are licensed to write different kind of personal loans. And we had a team of statisticians and data scientists that built customized credit scores to help those companies be successful. And so, the amazing opportunity of moving to the U.S. Virgin Islands, and in particular St. Croix, for me was very attractive. We were able to become a part of the Economic Development Authority EDA or EDC program. It's been an amazing experience. I highly, highly recommend it. It has enabled our business to be so much more successful than it would have otherwise been by allowing us to reduce our tax liability and reinvest that back into the company and use that for creating jobs and things. And it's very, very important. It's an amazing mission. And so, fast forward, I am a citizen of St. Croix and I'm a business owner. And the economy of U.S. Virgin Islands and St. Croix in particular is very important to me and to my family, my business partners, and my friends and neighbors here. And as Senator Francis mentioned, when Hovenza had gone bankrupt, and you literally saw around 2,000 people lose their jobs roughly like in one day. You saw schools close, you saw stores close, restaurants and bars close. People that you knew that loved it here did not have an opportunity anymore. They had to move away. Your kids' friends had to move away. It's pretty terrible. And so, like a lot of other people, I didn't think there was too much I could do about it. So ArcLight, bought the refinery in the bankruptcy process, and all of a sudden you saw the activity happening again. You saw the man camp go up. You saw people moving back. You saw school enrollment going up. Things started happening, and it's, man, this is good. Like this is how it should be. And there was a very unfortunate environmental incident that occurred due to human error. And in my assessment, poor management, poor leadership, not due to any technical limitations of the facility or to any type of equipment problem. And so just like that, $3.2 billion of investment that ArcLight had made into the refinery was gone, as well as the many billions that was invested by Hess and Hovenza over the years, gone, just like that. So once again, I felt rather helpless. You start seeing people lose their jobs again. So a couple crazy guys came to me and said, hey, you know what? We should try to save the refinery. I said, man, you guys are crazy, but I'm crazy too. So let's see about it. What do you guys have in mind? How possibly can we do this? And so we determined that we could be the benefactors of that significant multi-billion-dollar investment in the oil refinery and prevent the place from getting demolished. The only people that were interested in bidding on that refinery was a company that wanted to get some precious metals out of there that is used as part of the refining process. People may not know this, but there's about, I won't say how much, but let's say there's a lot of platinum in that place. And it's used as part of a chemical reaction for the refining. I learned. Also, you can see there's stainless steel, aluminum, like so much metal. There's a ton of stuff in there. There's gas turbines, there's compressors, there's pumps. You name it, it's in there. Fire trucks, amazing fire truck, maybe the best fire truck I've ever seen in my whole life. You know, all this stuff is in there. People don't really realize what is in that place. It is incredible. And so my goal was, I consider myself a St. Croix person, was for St. Croix people to be responsible for the oil refinery in St. Croix. Not some guys in suits in Boston. No offense to people from Boston. No guys in suits in New York. No offense to our friends in New York. You know, I didn't want people in some faraway place pushing buttons behind a desk, controlling the environment and the safety and the health of the people here in the U.S. Virgin Islands and in St. Croix. And I said, so you know what? If I can get involved in this process by some type of miracle and make sure that St. Croix people have some say in what is going on in that refinery, then that would be a good thing. Obviously, it could be a good investment. And when you look at what the refinery was able to be acquired for in the bankruptcy, it's public information, it was bought for $62 million. I'm telling you, ArcLight alone spent $3.2 billion. Hess spent many billions more than that. So to acquire that amazing asset, incredible in the world, incredible in America, for that amount of money was an incredible opportunity. And to me, it was worth it to put, to some large extent, my reputation, also my own financial resources at risk to try to do this. It's much bigger than just me, but I felt like if I am not willing to step up and try to do this, then who's going to come and do it? Nobody was going to come and do it. Nobody was going to step up and go and do this. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm wild enough, crazy enough. I'm going to go and I'm going to try to do it. So we screwed around and did it. It's a long story. I don't have time for it right here. I could probably write a book about it. It could maybe go into a movie. It involves a lot of wild twists and turns. But the end of it, as it is now, by this March, I was able to acquire a controlling interest in the oil refinery. I am the managing partner at this time, and I'm essentially acting as the CEO of the oil refinery. And so I'm doing my best to make this is not a day-to-day basis, to try to take what was once an oil refinery and, as Anthony is suggesting, have a bigger, more future-looking vision of what this place can be. Yes, it was an oil refinery. Yes, it will, or maybe still will be an oil refinery. But when you look at it, it is 400 and some acres of an amazing industrial site. When you look at that place, you could do almost anything there. You could assemble lithium batteries. You could make hydrogen as a next generation clean fuel. You could make biodiesel. You can make renewable high-octane gasoline. You can make sustainable aviation fuel. These are clean fuels of the future, and we could make those things right here. Those fuels are made cleaner, and they burn cleaner. They are the future. And we have a lot of the equipment, a lot of the technology, a lot of the infrastructure, and frankly, a lot of the talent that can go and make those things happen. So that is what excites me. We have the potential to generate enough power to run the entire refinery and the entire island of St. Croix without even thinking about it, with existing technology that we have, and on a cheaper basis than WAPA, on a more reliable basis than WAPA, and with less emissions than WAPA, based on the technology we have. And I'm telling you, this technology is not even that new. I'm talking about gas turbines, and these are big. I mean, the gas turbine is bigger than this whole room, just one of them. I got like 8 of them. They make 18 megawatts up to like 24 megawatts of power, which is pretty incredible. The whole island of St. Croix on grid is anywhere from 36 to 41 megawatts continuous. We can make that without even thinking about it. We have plans to put in the largest solar array in the entire Caribbean. So, when it gets done, I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but the refinery and the other industrial applications that could be done on that site could be primarily powered by the sun through solar and clean energy, and a large part of what can be done on that site is going to be renewable, sustainable, and so much cleaner than it was before. So I'm excited about making contacts and finding out about what are the possibilities of things that we can do. We're all in on Port STX, and to be a part of that, we think that the oil refinery property can be much more. It could be an energy company. It could be a hub for clean energy and clean power for the future. And we're very excited about bringing on some new investors and about the possibilities of things we could do on the site.
How could you not be excited about this, huh? Before we open the floor for questions to our panel, I want to ask the CEO of Jacent to come to the podium. And the reason this is important, I'm a numbers guy, so I always rattle numbers. So Jacent is a very successful military defense contractor. Does a lot of business with the Department of Defense. Why is that important? Remember I said, when you are a hub zone, 2 to 3% of the federal dollars are spent in a hub zone. The entire U.S. Virgin Islands is a hub zone. So when we start building the type of infrastructure and enterprise we're talking about, the $280 billion that the federal government appropriated to give incentive for manufacturers to build the advanced semiconductor chips that you see taking place, the Inflation Reduction Act, the $300 billion, given the tax credit incentives, the $10 billion that the military, the Navy is going to spend, or the military, I should say, on their fleet. We now, having these enterprise, we are in a prime position to get literally millions of dollars that can come into this territory that will attract private sector capital investment, because the federal government understands that. They provide the incentive, it attracts private sector capital to come into the economy. And so Rodney, if you don't mind, again, just real quickly, tell people what the hub zone is, please.
Okay, I'm Rodney Williams. Glad to be here. I'm the president, founder, and CEO of Jacent Consulting and Technologies. So we provide support to the Department of Defense, intelligence community, and agencies around the federal government. So we have, I think, a little more than 100 employees in 8 different states. So the significance of hub zone, and I'm going to be very, very quick, is one thing about the hub zone, it is known as a set-aside category. So with the federal government, they are set-aside categories within small business. You have your regular small business, and then you have what's called socioeconomic or set-aside categories, which is woman-owned, service-disabled veteran-owned for those veterans, and hub zone, which is historically underutilized business zones. One thing that's significant about hub zone, and I've been in the federal government, been around the small business, socioeconomic subcontracting long enough to really understand one thing about the agencies. Each agency within the Department of Defense, the civilian agencies, all across the federal government, all have their small business offices that are supposed to govern how work is distributed to the small businesses, from those small businesses that are unrestricted to those socioeconomic categories, correct? Now, one thing about that is there's the 8A numbers, there's your service disabled veteran numbers, and then there's your hub zone numbers. One thing that you will find when you do your research is most agencies historically do not meet their hub zone numbers. They do not meet their hub zone numbers. And I'm coming from a perspective as I live this every day. I actually have government agencies just called me recently, about 2 months ago, for a multi-million-dollar contract. He's like, Rodney, we've been talking about you. Aren't you hub zone? I said, not yet. I'm in the process. Can you help me find a hub zone? I got a $20 million contract. I have to give it to a hub zone. That's very, very real. And one of the challenges is companies being able to meet the requirements to become hub zone, or making it attractive for companies to want to become hub zone. Because one of the things that has always been a negative about hub zones, they've always said, well, if you want to have a hub zone company, you have to put it in a less than desirable area. In Maryland, they say, well, you need to go to Baltimore. You need to go near DC. And many businesses have not necessarily wanted to do that. But what's significant about this, being able to put a hub zone in the Virgin Islands, who, myself included, would not want to open a business in the Virgin Islands and have your headquarters in the Virgin Islands. Oh, how difficult would that be? So going from that perspective and talking to Anthony and then opening the door and carrying the message, the narrative of, hey, you can open up a business. And it's my intent to open up a hub zone. My process starts in January to open up a hub zone here in the Virgin Islands so that I will have access as a hub zone certified company, continuing to bid on those contracts. So the opportunities now and the opportunities in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so here's your opportunity. If you have a question, you're not obligated, of course, but here's your opportunity. You've heard a lot from these gentlemen. Tomorrow, we're going to do a tour of the refinery. David Johnson is going to graciously allow us to tour the refinery. And if, based on everything you heard, if you would like to tour the refinery, I think up to 7 to 10 people can be part of that tour. So if you want to be a part of that tour, please let me know so I can put you down as well. All right. Based on what you've heard so far, do you have any questions? I know our young people are here. LaShawn, I don't know if you want to have the young folks participate as well, but please, the floor is open to any questions to any of our panelists. As always. Senator Donna Fred Gregory is from the St. Thomas St. John district. She is a leader in that community and in the entire Virgin Islands. Senator, what you've heard, based on what you've heard so far, and being a lawmaker, you've been in the executive branch, you're in the legislative branch, being in the St. Thomas St. John's district. Can you share with us? Give us.
Absolutely, and thank you for the opportunity. And as I was sitting here, there are great things that can happen here. And it means that we all have to work together. So, Anthony, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sticking with this and ensuring that we are boots on the ground and we continue to push for economic development in the Virgin Islands, and particularly on the island district of St. Croix. So I've heard a lot this morning, and as my colleagues spoke about the opportunity zone, I believe you passed that legislation in the 33rd legislature, and that was my first year as a senator. And I came right behind him because we talked about the transshipment point. And we had a unique opportunity where one of our schools in the St. Thomas St. John district in particular, we could not rebuild on that particular property. It was a good opportunity for us to look to economic development on that property. And I believe that our EDA CEO spoke about it, and that is the Cancrine property. And we were able to work together to pass legislation to work along with the Virgin Islands Port Authority to ensure that we have a transshipment point on that particular property. So there is unique opportunities here because we have the Windward and the Leeward Islands, so we call it the Eastern and the Western Caribbean. And there's opportunity for us now to be that provider of goods and services, and particularly goods, between those Caribbean countries in the Virgin Islands. We have that opportunity, but we can't continue to just talk about it. And it's something that gives me anxiety because I see the unique opportunity that we have. And so this conversation says to me that we are definitely on the move on recognizing the things that we need to do as a territory, and the fact that it's important for us to invite individuals outside of the Virgin Islands to provide us with the necessary supports for our economic development. And I want to thank y'all for really looking at the Virgin Islands, looking at St. Croix, and saying yes to St. Croix and yes to the Virgin Islands, because once we hear St. Croix, it's a island within the Virgin Islands. The one thing that we do here that's very different from a lot of states is we have one pot. One pot. So if St. Croix wins, the entire Virgin Islands wins. So that matters to me, that you have said yes to St. Croix and there is opportunity, and it's my fervent hope that whatever we have to do to ensure that we are able to develop that legislation and the work on the South Shore, on St. Croix, that we do it together. We do it as stakeholders and investors. So I can't thank you enough for what I'm seeing here, what I'm hearing here. I made a deliberate effort to come here today. I got up at 6 o'clock this morning, made sure that I was here, because I want to know what's happening in the Virgin Islands, where we're going, what matters to not only us locally, but what matters to the people that are looking at us in the Virgin Islands and seeing that we are, this place is a place where there's unique opportunity for not only us to be successful, but for outsiders, for individuals who are interested in what we do and what we can promote and develop here. They want to come here as to provide support to us and our people. So I can't thank you enough. I am so looking forward to this, and anything that I can do as a senator, I'm here for it. I'm definitely here for it. So I want to make sure I say that.
Thank you. Thank you. And it was important to hear from our senator because, again, like she represented the St. Thomas District. These, the Senate President, Nova Francis, and Donna Fred Gregory are important top leadership in the legislature. Thank you so much for that, Senator. I see Brandon waiting in the in the back room there. If you can see him in the corner. Brandon, I don't know if you can hear me. Just shake your head if you can hear me, Brandon. It looks like you're listening attentively. There you go. Okay. So, Brandon, I want to ask Carolyn Howell to stand up, please. Carolyn Howell is the CEO of one of the country's finest major corporate event companies, period. Bono. Carolyn is the SEDI-CASE team leader in Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia. And I thank you, Carolyn, for being here and for really just partnering with us. She loves St. Croix. She loves the Virgin Islands. And she's always here to say, what can I do to help? Thank you, Carolyn, for that. Because of Carolyn is how I met the CEO of Jacent. Jacent, obviously you heard from the CEO of Jacent, but Brandon is one of the head individuals for the state of Maryland for their cybersecurity division. Brandon is one of those collaborative partners, another strategic partnership. This is unorthodox, folks, out of the box thinking, not done before. When I talk about this, people look at like, this is not normal, because I don't think normal. And so, Brandon, if you can, hopefully we can hear you, but just real quickly, say hi to the folks. And again, we are pursuing a collaborative partnership between the U.S. Virgin Islands and the state of Maryland in smart city infrastructure development and cybersecurity. And the SEDI-CASE technology team leader is the CEO of Jacent, and he's responsible for that relationship we are forging with the state of Maryland. Brandon, can you hear us? It's not coming through? The volume is low? Oh, hold on, Brandon, hold on. Brandon, can you hear me? Brandon, can you hear me? I don't think he. Brandon, we can hear you faintly from the computer, but the folks in the room can't hear you, and the folks watching and listening via radio can't hear you. We're going to have to try and resolve that. I apologize for the technical difficulty, but you know, I don't know if you want to just say real quickly, Rodney, as to the envisioned partnership and relationship we're talking about with the state of Maryland.
Yes, when we talk about smart city technology, we're talking about the integration of high-end capabilities from the network engineering perspective all the way to potential cloud engineering, all of those new and innovative things. Being able to partner, create this collaborative partnership with Maryland and the U.S. Virgin Islands. We're talking about cybersecurity, and okay, we all know cybersecurity is one of those new buzzwords. When we say cyber, we're talking about everything from the bad actor insider threat capability all the way to critical infrastructures, power, infrastructure, user activity. So we're talking about the full spectrum, or we say the full life cycle of cyber. And what we want to be able to do is not just by bringing in the state of Maryland and creating that, extending that partnership with the U.S. Virgin Islands and the state of Maryland, what you'll also get is the companies within Maryland that support not only the state of Maryland, but those key government entities within the state of Maryland, namely the National Security Agency, Health and Human Services, Department of the Army, because Maryland is a hub for many of our nation's key defensive agencies. I know because I'm supporting them. So that opens the door for the partnership, not just with the state of Maryland proper, but with all of those key entities within the state of Maryland and those high-end companies that support them. Over.
Thank you so much for that. Let me close out this panel by simply saying, New York is the financial capital of the world, but Washington, D.C. is the national security corridor of the country. When we talk about Frederiksted, St. Croix, Hollywood, Florida, Brookhaven, New York, those are the three rings that control the 75% of the internet traffic. You heard recently Congressman Stacey Plaskett passing legislation to connect Africa to the U.S. Virgin Islands via our fiber optic network. Why is that important? Because cybersecurity is a problem in the Caribbean, Latin American region. Cybersecurity is a problem in the country and overseas. And so therefore, our subsea cable, one of the largest, second to New York, is going to play an important role in the process of cybersecurity integration and monitoring, if you will. And so that's why the state of Maryland and Rodney and what he does is going to play an important role in that process. Question, let me thank you so much to our panelists. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry for jumping in real quickly, Anthony. Randy talked about branding, and I just wanted to indicate that's another study that we're doing at the EDA. We're actually looking at rebranding the EDA to make sure we're not only fresh, but that we represent things that industry best practices represent. But part of our branding is also place branding. So in the near future, you may see some stuff into how do we brand the Virgin Islands internationally. Many areas, similar to Brooklyn, have now gone to place branding, where you see a logo, you identify directly with that place right off the bat. And then many businesses use that logo throughout. One of the better ones I saw as we go through the exercises is Great Britain. And every business uses great, 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 great. And so we're looking at place branding also as one of the areas to basically provide exposure for the territory. And I just wanted to say that because I wanted to piggyback on what Randy said.
There's a district in Seoul, Korea. It's called Seongsu. We do a lot of work with Seoul. We have good partnership with Seoul. They call it the Brooklyn of Seoul. They give tours of this area, this district, as if it's what you would experience if you come to Brooklyn. With former industrial that has become sort of a hipster sort of enclave in Seoul. But there's a lot of truth to the brand. The other thing I just want to say, I'm a baseball guy, and the game has evolved over the years, and we try and hit a lot of home runs because it's what the fans want. But you win games by hitting singles. And I just listening to some of the stories here. By the way, I have to say, Anthony, it's an amazing panel. I've learned so much just sitting here right now. But folks that who have come here, not originally from here, but have stayed here and have built businesses here. And that's the attraction of talent that can have an effect, a multiplying effect over the long term, right? So if you have great people, great things happen, right? And that's the truth. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead. Sure.
So you talked about the technology component and
Which we'll discuss tomorrow, the IT part, but go ahead.
okay.
Go ahead.
I'm asking the question specifically with regards to the Virgin Islands Next Generation Network. Is there a relationship and are there conversations around what's happening with fiber, the connections within the Caribbean, et cetera? Do we plan to do those extensions and on and on? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Where is that conversation? Because that is a very, very important conversation.
Important, very important. So tomorrow at the UVI Research and Technology Park, we're focusing on technology, telecom, energy, et cetera, et cetera. But let me just say this. The federal government gave $75 million. We put up $75 million, about $150 million to build the middle mile. That's what the VINGN is. One of a colleague, he stepped out the room, Anthony Harris. He ran the subsea cable fiber optic network for several years. He's here. He's now in Myrtle Beach. He's now with DC Block running that cable station. And so we are going to partner with the city of Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach and the U.S. Virgin Islands have something in common. What Hugo did to St. Croix back in 1989, they did the same thing to Myrtle Beach. So Myrtle Beach is putting together a smart city pilot project. They have now invite the Virgin Islands to be part of that smart city pilot program project. And so yes, appropriate question. John is going to moderate the telecom panel. He's on the board of VINGN. And so very timely, appropriate question, because tomorrow we're going to have a discussion on the role of that middle mile and the last mile in this process, and where do we go from there. Thank you so much for that.
So at this point, we're actually just going to take a small break, just 10 minutes to restore your personal comfort. And then we're going to ask you to come back so that we can have another panel that will take us right up to lunchtime. I just want to remind all of you, we are here for business, and business is great. I can't imagine a better place to do business. So as we're in this intimate setting, as we're running into these individuals, the panelists here, as well as those in the audience you may not have met, please stop, engage, connect. This is how business is done. So restore your personal comfort. We'll see you back in 10 minutes.
The panel coming up is on transportation, logistics, air and sea logistics, and supply chain. And we're going to talk about the shipyard, and we're going to talk about the major modernization of the two airports.
Hi. And I know. And yeah. And when you roll it as a race, you know, this guy goes here, this guy goes here, this guy goes here, and it's like, no. And then some of it was not, some of it was what I talked about that you know, some of it they actually made some and the reaction between and other causes separate. They needed to drink water. Okay,
time. It has a different meaning in the U.S. Virgin Islands. It goes backwards, forwards, it stops. St. Croix is rooted in history. So much of it still remains untouched.
I remember running on these streets as a kid. This shop was right down there. It opened the same year I was born. This is where the original Crucian hook was born. It's the symbol of these islands. And I want
Capital Markets. Aired on WSTX Bloomberg Radio, on Apple TV, Fire, Amazon Fire, Roku, Time Warner Cable, Fios, you name it, we're there. And so, Anthony, if you can begin.
Testing 1, 2. All right.
And he's live.
Fantastic. All right, so let's call the chairman of the Virgin Islands Port Authority, Willard John. Craig Gantry for Petromar International. Richard, is he in the room? Richard, come up to the panel, please. We also have John Clendenin, please. We have the St. Croix source, so not only we're gonna go live on radio, WSCX Bloomberg, live on our TV, and Carolyn just mentioned all the different platforms that we are streaming live around the world. And then we now have the source in the room, so they're live on the source as well. All right, so it sounds a little bit too loud. Transportation, air, sea, logistics, and supply chain. Earlier, I spoke about a U.S. Virgin Islands project in upstate New York, Newburgh, New York, and synergy between the two airports. Stewart International Airport and St. Croix Henry Wilson Airport are one of the two longest runways in the country, over 10,000 feet. Now you think having the longest runway, and because of the military role Stewart played, it was necessary to have that length of runway, and I'm not going to steal John's thunder, he's going to talk about that. But also, both airports are dubbed branded international passenger terminals. There's no air freight, international air freight at those two airports. And we've had that international label forever. The Virgin Islands benefits on the sea part, the exemption from the Jones Act. I mentioned earlier, Leon has built an $11 billion enterprise. How and why? While other US-based oil refineries were forced to use American-made vessels, being in the U.S. Virgin Islands, deliberately, strategically building this refinery in the U.S. Virgin Islands, gave him the ability to use foreign vessels to transport crude oil. Bring in the crude oil, refine them, and then when you're exempt from the Jones Act, that means you can do 2 U.S. ports. And that's one of the uniqueness we talked about in terms of our position. And so you're going to hear today about plans to modernize our infrastructure, our airport infrastructure, but you're also going to hear about this individual, Craig Gantry, he's an incredible resource when it comes to the maritime space. Every segment, every intersection of that business, he has ran those ships, some shipyards, and so we have an asset in Craig Gantry, and you'll hear all about it. So I want to thank you, gentlemen. Richard, before I forget Richard. Richard has been a long-standing resident of St. Croix. He builds yachts, catamaran ships, boats, I should say. He's made millions of dollars in investments in this economy, built in his operation, trained a lot of local Virgin Islands to develop the skill sets to be in that business. And so he's going to play an important role going forward in terms of that transportation space, if you will, of manufacturing these boats. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Let me say, John, thank you as well for what you're doing in Newburgh, New York, to build, to connect Newburgh, New York and St. Croix, and helping to ease the congestion of, traffic, freight traffic in the New York tri-state area. The Newburgh project is going to be important. I don't know where Mark Jaffe, he's supposed to be part of this panel. I'm not sure where he is, but hope he comes in shortly. But that's not what it's for. I want to say thank you, Mr. Chairman of the Virgin Islands Port Authority. You guys have an exciting modernization project for both Henry Rolson and Cyril King Airport. Why don't you do the honors and just give us an overview of obviously your position as the chairman and where you guys are and where you're hoping.
Good afternoon. Is it morning or afternoon? I don't even know.
Still morning.
Good morning, everybody. I see the youngsters left, and Anthony, I want to thank you for inviting the school children, because it's important that we involve them in all that we do, because we're not going to be here forever. So the Port Authority, as you know, is responsible for all the ports, both sea and airports. Starting with the airports, we get approximately 900,000 people passing through the Virgin Islands, close to 1 million. We want to improve on that. It's been going well, and it's been a steady increase over the years, with the exception of the pandemic. We did well for the pandemic, but not as well as before, but we're getting back to where we were before the pandemic. We're about 100,000 less than we did before the pandemic. So it's going pretty well. But we also see the need for improvement. Our airports in the Virgin Islands are somewhat outdated. We want to be on par with the rest of the ports in the Caribbean. So we decided to embark on a P3 endeavor. We had a number of people or companies that were interested in developing and managing our airports. So we put out a RFQ, and we got a significant response. And at the end of the day, there were four companies that made the cut. We are now in the process of them responding to our RFP, request for proposals. We want to see a modern airport. We want to see the jet bridges. We want to see the modern stores. But at the same time, we want to be assured that we maintain our culture. So that's very, very important. We also want to make sure that the jobs are local, that our people have that, the local residents have the opportunity to be involved in all phases of this project, from the build to the management to the operation. So the RFP, is in process. I think we're going to get our responses by the beginning of next year. And then by the following year, after we pick that one company, we will then negotiate with them all the details, because as you know, devil is in the details. So hopefully, within a year or two, we'll be in process. That should really bring us in competition with all of the airports in the region. And if you travel in the Caribbean, you see they have some really nice airports. So we want to be there. Likewise with our seaports, we get, I believe, 1.7 million passengers in the Virgin Islands in our seaports, and that's competitive for the rest of the Caribbean, of course. But again, we want to continue to build on that. So I know recently we've come into an agreement with the Royal Caribbean Group. And, they're gonna provide them and their companies. They have a company that do construction, etc. And we've entered into an agreement with them. And for example, in St. Thomas, they want to put up another port, another dock where the ships can come up. We're going to do the proper dredging both in Waiko and Crown Bay. And then they want to develop the infrastructure in Crown Bay, where there are more shops, there are more recreational facilities. If they bring more ships in, then we're talking about transportation issues. Do we have enough taxis? What is the traffic like? Do we have to move to water taxis in addition to the land taxis? So those are the things we're looking at to develop as we move along. Because if we're going to have more customers, we have to have the infrastructure to accommodate them. So those are some of the things. In St. Croix, we're doing work on a current pier. The blowout panels are being redone. There's a tender pier where the local ships and the dive companies come up. We're developing that as well. And then we're looking at a plan for how we're going to develop the down structure around the pier in St. Croix. So those are some of the things that we're doing right now. As far as cargo is concerned, since the hurricane, we did get a significant amount of federal money to help us rebuild. So the warehouses that we have where all the cargo comes in, we've developed that. We're 99, 98% complete with those. We have one, the cargo house, and that's, there's one issue, and that's with WAPA. When that's resolved, we're going to open and the companies can relocate there. Also in the molasses pier, where there is the inter-island commerce as it relates to cargo, we put up a new building there as well. That's almost complete. The building itself is complete, but little things are happening. I think the water pump, the fire pump is the issue. Once we get that resolved, that will open. So both of these will open probably within the next 2 months or less. And that will facilitate that commerce between islands and the mainland as well.
Yeah, okay, there you go. I want to continue on the path of air transportation. So I'm going to ask John he's up next. But let me just say this. Okay, yes. You mentioned a very key point, international passenger airlift. All the other Caribbean islands have a lot of international passengers, airlines coming in. Is it the hope by modernizing these airports and whoever the successful company is to really tap into that international market, if we can bring in international flights? I'm just curious to know.
The answer is yes, but that would have to be a joint effort because we have to partner with tourism. They do all the advertising and they do the push to bring the passengers in. The significant amount of passengers that we get is out of the United States, and it's really big. But we've had those endeavors in the past. I remember we had several direct flights coming out of Denmark back in the past, and hopefully we'll attempt to do that again. And what we do, as far as the port is concerned, when there's a new route, we suspend a lot of the fees so that for the first year or two, so that they can get settled in and to encourage them to come. And once we partner with tourism, they'll do their share in promoting it to bring the people.
Okay, that's great. I often wonder, why is it that we're not seeing or getting a lot of the international flights in? And I'm hoping that the total modernization of the two airports will incentivize international travel.
I'm sure it will.
Stewart International Airport do get international airlines airlift into Stewart, upstate New York. John, talk to us about the New York Plaza Stewart Airport project.
Good morning, Mr. Weeks, and
Your mic.
Good morning. Yes. Yes. Good morning, Mr. Weeks, and the.
Is it me? It sounds kind of.
No, it's not on. Is the light on?
Yeah.
I'll give you mine.
Hello. Hello. Maybe I close. Good morning again. So, John Clendenin, I'm Chairman and CEO of the Inner Circle Group here on Long Island, here on St. Croix. I'm sixth generation Cruisian, but I've been back here for 20 years, and we run our company out of Frederiksted. My background, I've been in supply chain logistics for over 50 years. In the last 20 years, I've been focused on international trade, global trade facilitation. And with that, our company has done projects in the Balkans and around the world. We have, I have business process patents on the exchange of data and documents in multiple formats and structures. So we have preceded the UN Single Windows Initiative Recommendation 33 on building single window platforms for trade. For 10 years, I've been working with the port directors and customs to see how, because the United States, through the ACE system, automated customs environment, has connected and spent $6 billion on the ACE system, but we're not part of that. We're a separate customs jurisdiction, so we don't have that capability. So we're looking at how do you bring that ability to our ports. So that brings me to New York and the Stewart project. So we had done work in the with USAID and the Trade Development Agency in building Corridor 10 through the Balkans, from shipments through the Suez Canal, through China, from China into Thessaloniki, and our software translated it into Cyrillic after it went into the Greek alphabet and into the customs and formats of the different border agencies. So a border has phytosanitary, weights and measures, customs, border police, phytosanitary, and those systems have legacy systems that incorporate that. So that brings us to how do we do that in New York? So we were trying to do it in the Virgin Islands, and we decided, well, since I'm actually, you know, when people say, what school did I go to? I tell them, Tech Knight, Brooklyn Tech. And so the uniqueness about, as you know, Dave was talking about the uniqueness of the refinery, the uniqueness that we have in Stewart, it was part of the BRAC closing, so the Base Realignment and Closing Initiative. It's in the hub zone, and it has different capabilities because it's Stewart. Now, Stewart closed, but the airport was still open. Stewart, the Air Force Base, closed, but the Air Force Guard is still there, and the airport is still run through the National Guard. And the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey has a 99-year lease on the airport itself. So what we've done is looked at the New York International Plaza, which is the 150 acres of commercial land that was the old military base, and we're in contract to buy that 150 acres of land. What we're doing is that Stewart is on the Hudson River, and it has a deep water seaport in Beacon. Conrail runs on the west side of the Hudson, and so there's rail. They have the air terminal, which I'll get to as the last part, but they also have trucking that we can put electric vehicles that we talked about before and reach the 51 miles to New York City with electric vehicles. So as Anthony mentioned, we have air transportation there already with international flights, but there's no air cargo. They have some cargo that's domestic. So part of the facilities that we're taking over are 3 commercial Class A office buildings and also an Amazon warehouse. So we're going to build warehousing in Stewart to be able to accommodate global logistics cargo. We're going to move that transportation cargo from JFK. So JFK is focusing now on passenger terminals, and we want to uncongest the port in JFK because when the cargo comes there, they have no seaport, and what they do is it's all trucks, and they congest the Verrazano Bridge, the George Washington Bridge, with all the trucks going through New York and the environmental impact. If we take electric vehicles and trailers that take the cargo containers into New York, we can cross-dock them with air, with the rail, and bring in cargo coming from ships into Red Hook, Brooklyn, and instead of the congestion in the ports where they can't get the trailers and the trucks out of the port, we're going to use more of a Virginia model of the ports by bringing those containers by barge up to Newburgh, and then we'll do what we call cross-docking. So what we hope to achieve is to be able to take our license that we've acquired from the World Trade Center organization. So we have the license for World Trade Center Frederiksted, which will take in capacity for the Caribbean. Each of the World Trade Centers has a specific task and their focus. Ours is on world trade data and document exchange. So we want to take advantage of the internet capability and our IC hosting division to be able to bring the trade facilitation software that all the SMEs need to do that total visibility of the supply chain. So shipping companies like Franz Maas, Kuehne Nagel all have ERP systems, and they know where your cargo is. Amazon knows where your cargo is. The trucking companies, Yellow Freight, they know where your cargo is. Okay? The airlines, American, Delta, they know where your cargo is. But they don't know, and they can't transfer the data among themselves. So if you're on an American flight and they switch you, and you can track your baggage, and they switch you to a United flight, you no longer have visibility of your baggage. So we're trying to do that for trade. What we want to do then is link the 11,000-foot runway in New York to St. Croix and provide cargo direct visibility for the Caribbean diaspora. So we bring the cargo into New York. From New York here, we can work with airlines, and we've been talking with some, to be able to bring the cargo, not just the transportation of people. So as we were talking about, Mr. John talking about the terminals here, what we're looking at is to provide an opportunity to not just have it be a hub as in the Caribbean for passengers. So instead of having to go to Jamaica or Barbados, you have to go back to Miami and then go through. We can have an international hub and airport here, but also for cargo. And it works 2 ways. So we're looking at increasing the cargo shipments with food insecurity, for example, from South America, to bring them to St. Croix and have a hub that directly brings that into the New York area. So the idea is to build the smart city. We've been going to Taiwan now for 6 years, and to build a smart city in Newburgh, New York, with renewable energy, with internet, 5G infrastructure, and do the same thing here in St. Croix. So what we have done is we have a relationship with the data centers or the switch at Lumen, and we have the capability of we're building a data center for international trade, logistics information in St. Croix, and we have a network operations center. We just bought the building across from the port in Frederiksted, the old bank building. and that will be our Network Operations Center and World Trade Center Frederickson. Thank you.
No, thank you for that, John. And you kind of touched on it briefly, and Senator Francis in his presentation panel, where they talked about they went and they toured fulfillment centers in terms of the Amazons of the world.
Some of the things that were talked about before with the use of Renaissance Park and the trade and the facilities here. Because we're exempt from the Jones Act, how that happens is the same type of thing that we're looking at doing in New York. So it's not just that we're exempt. What that means is that, let's say a ship from China comes through the Panama Canal. When it lands here, if it goes without going to St. Croix, and it goes to Miami, or it goes to Baltimore, or it goes to New York, or it goes to Houston, those ports then has a ship that has cargo that goes then by rail or truck to different parts of the United States. So it comes into Miami, it unloads that ship, but some of that ship's cargo has to go to Chicago. It goes to different places on land. If it goes to New York, the same thing happens. By taking advantage of that in St. Croix, what the intention is to have a cross-docking facility where a ship from China can come and then cross-dock to other carrier ships and go to Houston or Miami or Baltimore with full container loads, just like full truckloads into that area. So there's a strategic advantage from supply chain logistics based on spirit rules of inventory logistics and all those kinds of things that come to play here, but it's made available because of those things. The same thing with the free trade zones. By bringing those cargoes in, we can do the pre-inspections. There's only a couple of super ports where Customs and Border Police can inspect the containers. Less than 4% of containers are inspected now. So when you talk about Homeland Security, we can bring in those containers that are going to go to the United States and pre-inspect them and get qualifications that happen to Customs and Border Patrol of the enhanced ability of the port. So there's a lot of technical things that go into play by those aspects. And what we're trying to do is, as Mr. John is looking at, what are those infrastructure things that happen with how do you have the airport itself run? There's all the infrastructure that supports it. How do they get the fuel? How do they get the electricity? How do they refurbish the planes, the maintenance on the planes? How do they do the cross-docking of the materials and the logistics are all things that can happen within the Port Authority land and what's happening here in St. Croix that will support that in free trade zones.
Thank you for that, John. So again, our partnership with the two New York Chamber of Commerce. New York is an international market, international hub. Gravitated towards the project when he heard about this U.S. Virgin Islands project and building and connecting with Stewart International Airport. Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your thoughts are?
Yes. Again, I'm Mark Jaffe with the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce. For those of you watching, you can go visit our website, chamber.nyc, or when you come visit New York, just give us a call at 212-CHAMBER. But this whole conference is setting up a win-win. The people in the territory win, the people in New York win, the people throughout the world win. When we do more commerce and trade, we have better chances to espouse democracy, capitalism, and all the values we have in common. This is a fantastic project. One of our big concerns globally and of course in New York is the environment. Congestive pricing is very important. It's a hot topic in New York right now. We have a lot of traffic in New York City in particular, in the tri-state area, which we work with. We're having an expo in New Jersey, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, upstate New York, and Stewart, with the major investment that our country made there as an Air Force base and then a terminal. The people here realized it. They knew about the Deepwater Port. And this plan works. It works on paper and it can work in reality. And again, knowing how the system works, advocating for what's good for all the people will work. When we open up this new logistic gem, it'll make a better experience for everybody coming into New York through JFK. They don't have to compete with as much cargo, as much traffic. The jobs that are created in both areas and globally through the new technologies are going to lead to a better lifestyle for everybody that's participating. And if people have better lifestyles and better choices and more goods are bought and sold, we all can live better together. I'm excited to learn more about some of these natural resources that you have on this beautiful island. And the territory is getting its feet back, so to speak. And you have an abundance of riches, an abundance of talent, and an abundance of friendship from New York. So the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce believes this plan can work. We'll advocate for this plan. The politicians in New York will understand at the federal level, our state level, and our local leaders. As was pointed out, I was asked to run for a local spot in a Westchester County office, not too far from the Stewart Airport. And believe it or not, that election was November 7th. And during the break, I just got off the phone with my attorney. This election will not be decided until after January. That's like 60 days after the election. It's close. It's contentious, John. It's contentious because there's too much polarization. And when we can work together cooperatively to speed the transportation of goods, to create jobs for our families, for everybody that participates, again, it's a win-win-win. And this conference, which is just beginning today, we're going to find out more about the partnerships, the opportunities, the richness of the resources that we share, and we're going to make this work together. So again, this is a project that will be supported by the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce. We will advocate for it because it makes good sense. And we have willing partners from the financial industry, the technology industry, the people that served our country, the people that served your territory. This is a project that will get the full support from the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Between the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and the Greater New York Chamber of Commerce, and guys, if I get the math wrong, just correct me, please. The two have per membership of businesses and professionals and the leadership in the New York area and New York City, 5 boroughs, particularly Brooklyn. The two combined has, 60,000 members, businesses. And the reason why that's important is because when we talk about how do we facilitate commerce, international trade and commerce, and the role transportation is going to play, we're going to need actors. We're going to need these businesses. We're going to need to create partnerships between the U.S. Virgin Islands and your respective members in your Chamber of Commerce. And the Economic Development Authority has the kind of programs. One in particular is the $57 million Treasury line of credit or funding they got approval.
Let's transition over to
Sorry, let's transition over to C's. So when the governor led the delegation to Taiwan in March, we met with the owner, the chairman, and CEO and the senior executive team for Evergreen. Evergreen, in the shipping container space, they're one of the largest shipping container companies in the world. They own one of the largest shipping container ships in the world. What most people don't know, Evergreen owns Eva Air. And Eva Air is considered one of the premier international airlines in the world. And so by virtue of our relationship, and the Taiwanese are coming in 2:30 on the American Airlines flight for a presentation with the Senate President, that we now have an opportunity to partner with Taiwan and Evergreen, not only with sea, but with air as well. And so when we talk about this international relationship in airlift and sea, we have Evergreen, a Taiwanese company, that we're going to have an opportunity to look at how we expand on that relationship. Let me start with Craig. Your knowledge in that whole ecosystem of marine is fascinating, okay? So why don't you share with the people in the room, but obviously people are watching and listening, who you are and why St. Croix is poised and unique for this opportunity.
Sure, thank you so much. And said a lot of nice things, Anthony. I really appreciate all the great introduction. I'm glad I have one of my employees back at home videotaping this, so definitely going to utilize this. Anyway, honored to be here as a part of this economic summit. I agree there's a tremendous amount of opportunities within the U.S. Virgin Islands and in particular in St. Croix, not only for what I'm going to speak on related to the maritime industry, but all these other topics. And actually, I have a background in intermodal logistics and transportation as a graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy. So I can tell you all the ideas and everything talked about is not only intriguing, but it's absolutely actionable and is going to be successful in this. You got a great team and a great plan, and I'm excited to see what happens. So my name is Craig Gundry. I'm representing Petramar. Petramar is an organization that has deep roots within the U.S. Virgin Islands. A famous resident, Captain Alex, many locals know who Captain Alex is, has not only has a residence here, has lived here. His daughter, Dominique, has grown up here in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. And Petramar has a vested interest in its past success, but of course its future success, largely in economic development. I myself have been brought on very recently as a consultant. I'm a president and founder of Cormorant Maritime Projects, who has specialized in the maritime shipbuilding, ship construction, and conversion industry for the last 20 years. In the last month, I've been here 3 times. That's how excited I am about the opportunity when it comes to the potential development of the current port and one of its properties in particular as a shipyard within the Virgin Islands here in St. Croix. As Anthony mentioned, the fact of the hub zone is very, very largely underutilized. Not only has the U.S. government, but one of the many subsets of the U.S. government, of course, is the U.S. Navy, and the Maritime Administration. The U.S. Navy designates up to 2% of its budget to hub zones. That presents a very unique and very profitable opportunity, not only for the shipyard itself, but of course for the supporting elements of the shipyard. Here in St. Croix and surrounding Virgin Islands, you already have a tremendous base of a skilled workforce that was a part of the development and once maintenance of the facility that now David is in charge of at the refinery. That is a very unique factor when it comes to other islands in the Caribbean, let alone the Virgin Islands. One of the big problems when you talk about doing ship repair within the islands is where is the infrastructure available to support it? A lot of these islands in the Caribbean are very attractive to put a shipyard. You've heard the stats and the stats mentioned by Anthony, how many ships are transiting the region, everything that's going on. So a lot of ideas always come. I've seen it. I've been a part of many, many committees, many, many feasibility studies. And most of the time when I step into them, I'm like, no. And the reason I say no is because you don't have the existing infrastructure to support. It's more than just the cost to bring in the equipment, to bring in the necessary facilities that the shipyard would own. But every single ship repair facility in the world, no matter how big or how small, requires a certain amount of infrastructure in the actual area it's going to be. Subcontractors, welders, workers, supporting industrial companies that can bring in equipment. No one shipyard is completely existing within its own sphere. You need that support. You need places for outside contractors to come in, actually outside specialists. And especially when the focus of the shipyard here is most likely going to be on supporting operational readiness for the United States Coast Guard, United States Navy, Military Seafood Command, as well as other supporting military vessels within the United States control. You're going to have a lot of opportunities for specialty contractors to establish themselves here. As you heard earlier in the last panel, the advantages of the hub zone, of companies being established. You have reasons for other maritime organizations to establish them here with the development of the shipyard, that then they can actually help them gain business in other areas within the United States. Another thing to think about, and I'm not sure how much it's been discussed in particular, but it came across my mind when David was speaking on the last panel, is when you're talking about alternative energies. One of the more famous developments recently around the United States and around the world is offshore wind. A lot of focus, a lot of grants, a lot of money has been put towards offshore wind development, in particular in the East Coast of the United States. One of the things that has slowed down the progress of those initiatives is the fact that because of its proximity to the United States, the need to use U.S. Jones Act vessels to actually execute the installation of those offshore wind farms. There just simply isn't enough vessels that qualify to support that initiative. This is something that could be very interesting, I believe, for the Virgin Islands to look into if it hasn't already, and I'm not sure. Again, I've only started coming around here in the last month, of what that could mean for some of the things that are still available or maybe could be pivoted from the United States Offshore Wind Initiative to establish offshore wind here in the Virgin Islands and take advantage of the fact that you can use non-Jones Act vessels in construction of that support. Are you aware of that's been spoken about in the Virgin Islands? No? Maybe it's the first time it's said. I'd be surprised. Every now and then I have a good idea, but who knows? But anyway, that's just one example about what is possible here related to maritime industry. Of course, you also, a shipyard, a ship repair facility to support the United States Navy, to support the Coast Guard, wouldn't just have only opportunities for what vessels could come in. As mentioned, now you're going to have this development. There's some great synergies of the development of the infrastructure, the port infrastructure. There'll be opportunities for, there's a lot of in-service repair that goes on in the commercial shipping industry. Of course, you have cruise lines coming to the area over into St. Thomas. It could be a hub for laborers and workforce utilized within the shipyard to go support emergency repairs or even planned repairs, or as a safe jump-off point for other in-service repairs that happens very often within the cruise lines. Shipyards can be used for supporting local infrastructure. As David brings the refinery back, it'll be another utilization or resource of his because that equipment, you're going to need CNC machines, you're going to need water jet cutters, you're going to need pipe benders, plate benders. That's something that could be utilized by David as what he's doing to reinvigorate and possibly re-envision what can be done at that refinery. So in closing, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very excited about all the opportunities that exist. Happy to answer any questions you have, either about the opportunities here within the Virgin Islands, and I look forward to meeting each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I'm glad that Senate President Hugo Francis is still here because, like I said, his vision and the fact that he's stuck to his guns to bring to fruition the free trade zone legislation, he needs to hear this. Everything that we're saying. Why? Because if he now, as the sponsor of that law, to now expand the free trade zone, because now you're hearing some other things that maybe you didn't consider. You're hearing firsthand what the potential are and the reasons for doing that. And I know David Johnson in the refining and transportation part of that model is going to play an important role as to what that mixed basket of things are. And I don't believe the refinery is in the free trade zone yet, right? But if there's an opportunity to look at how you're working that, oh, there you go. Yes. To expand that, I think that's going to be important. So Richard is, for me, I've been to Richard's operation, and it was the first time I've been to his manufacturing, yacht manufacturing operation. And I saw firsthand, I didn't know what to expect. Richard had young, local Virgin Islanders cruising, where he invested and trained these individuals where they literally are building these ships, these boats. I got to tell you, first time I saw them like, I didn't know that exists. And I want to thank you, Richard, for your commitment to the Virgin Islands and St. Croix, for bringing your manufacturing of boats here in the Virgin Islands. So please, share with us who you are and the great work you're doing here in the Virgin Islands.
All right, test, if you were working. Thank you, Anthony, and thank you everyone for being here and your interest. My name is Richard DeFede. I'm one of the co-founders of Gold Coast Yachts. I've been a resident of St. Croix for 47 years. And as Anthony said, this is what we do. We build boats. So Greg's been talking about ships. We're in a transportation panel. And in the maritime sector, it goes everywhere from a recreational boat that someone may have to an oil tanker. My business primarily designs and builds what's called a subchapter T vessel. This would be ferries or excursion vessels typically under 150 tons. What isn't known is that we've built almost $200 million worth of boats here on St. Croix. What isn't known is that currently we're investing $10 million to build a new manufacturing facility to double our capacity. Currently, we're sitting on about a $40 million backlog of boats to build, and we're turning away about $6 million worth of projects in a month. But as also has been mentioned by Craig, you need several components to make this happen. On a national level, you need a government programs related to labor, capital investment, taxes that makes it available for entrepreneurs all over the United States to go out and buy vessels. And then locally, you need policies that support the use of infrastructure. We're on an island. Infrastructure is limited. And so how do you use that infrastructure to diversify an economy? And that piece is critical because the meetings like we're having here today, we're at the 30,000 foot level. And it's amazing to hear what's being conceptualized at that 30,000 foot level. But when each one of us who live in the territory walk outside these doors and we're at sea level, we're meeting our neighbors and our friends and our family members who are at sea level. And what they want to know is, how is this going to improve my life? How is this going to make me capable of reaching my personal goals? How is it going to better the life of my children? And how do we build a sustainable future for the territory? And that without the cost of the quality of life, as been mentioned earlier. I think it was Mr. Pierce from New York earlier who had mentioned that you need a diversity of businesses in order to do that. And I think Gold Coast, in our small way, is contributing to that niche, but it happens within the types of frameworks and topics that we're talking about here. So maybe just as a way to introduce where we're heading as a company, as I said, we're making that capital investment to double our capacity. We immediately need to hire an additional 40 workers just for that phase of what we're doing. We're building a training center on site within our own facility. And then we've been in discussions with the VI government for a while to tear down the old LPJ housing facility, which has been abandoned, and build a yacht center there. The question is, well, why would that be valuable? Well, all right, so again, we're in an ecosystem. We have X number of hotel rooms in the territory. When COVID came, so many vessels that were denied entry into ports in the rest of the Caribbean found a home in Virgin Islands. And all of a sudden we looked out at Megan's Bay or even Frederiksted, St. Croix. And Frederiksted, St. Croix typically has, maybe $1 million or $2 million worth of boats anchored off of the shore. Well, during COVID, there was $200 million worth of boats anchored off of the shore. Megan's Bay in St. Thomas, they have $10 million or $20 million worth of boats anchored in its bay. During COVID, there was $400 million worth of boats anchored in Megan's Bay. And it wasn't lost on the governor's office and the Department of Tourism that we rapidly had doubled the number of hotel rooms at no capital cost or land infrastructure improvement to receive that. But the Virgin Islands and this entire part of the Caribbean has a problem. We're obviously in the hurricane trade belt, and so between 12 degrees north and 21 degrees north, insurance companies during a named storm hurricane will not insure your boat if you're located. And so one way that we can contribute to this ecosystem of the territory is to put in the Virgin Islands capacity for hauling out 100 to 150 vessels that might themselves carry 1,000 guests on a weekly basis and not have them have to depart the territory for months at a time during a named storm. So again, it's a small piece of a really big puzzle. I'm very grateful that the governor's office is entertaining the idea. It's certainly a land resource that's not being utilized. And probably the most important part is, as Craig had mentioned, it's not a one job environment. It's probably 100 to 200 individuals, and the subcontractors related to that would be another 100 to 200 individuals, and the thousands of guests that would be being on those boats and exploring the rest of the Virgin Islands would have a massive ripple effect through the territory. And again, all this is stemming from a little boat building company that started in Salt River with 5 people. That's now up to 70 people, is rapidly growing to 100 people, and hopefully within the next 3 years will be over 250 people. And so again, I'm grateful for the Senator for being here, for all the work that his office and the government here does to support businesses as well as the EDA, and their understanding of a diversity of businesses in the territory. And I'm hopeful that within the infrastructure, Anthony, that you're bringing to everyone's attention through this event and others that will be part of that thriving ecosystem. So thank you for letting me share our story, and I'm grateful to be here.
Much for that, Richard. Let me just say that I'm going to open the floor for question, but I want to share something with you that most people don't know. I had approached Dr. Charles Edward, the chairman and CEO of Kiwi International Airline. Kiwi was a result of the defunct Eastern Airline. All of the pilots and flight attendants that were part of that helped to form Kiwi International Airlines. Kiwi was challenged financially, and they had to make some strategic decisions. Turned out, during that time, there was this massive labor disruption with American Airlines, if you remember. All the flights coming into the Caribbean stopped because American had this huge labor disruption. So Governor Charles Turnbull created the Governor's Airline Task Force. I got Dr. Charles Edwards to agree to avail and to allow me to introduce Kiwi International Airlines to the Virgin Islands government. They were prepared and interested in Kiwi International Airline becoming a U.S. Virgin Islands national airline. All this talk we've had about airlift problems for St. Croix. This is back in the 90s, okay? We had the solution, literally in our hands. We had an opportunity to be able to partner, merge, and acquire Kiwi International Airlines, where it would have been rebranded Virgin Kiwi. We would have solved the lack of direct flights because Kiwi International Airline hub was Newark International Airport. Major thoroughfare for the Northeast is our largest market. We could have solved our airlift problem. Let me fast forward. The now defunct Miami Air International. Miami International private charter airline, I got them to agree under the DOT regulation to avail themselves to become a public charter airline. And what that simply means, a private charter airlines is permitted to look and operate like a legacy airline under the DOT rules. They were prepared. They said, Anthony, if you can keep the aircraft in the air flying, we would commit to 3 to 4 flights a week for the Virgin Islands via the very important hotspots, busy destination, Aruba, Curacao, St. Martin, Cayman Islands, Jamaica, okay? We would have kept the airline flying because what would have happened, the Virgin Islands, St. Croix would have been a stop weekly with direct flights while they were able to service these other destinations. So we can solve this problem. It's not an impossible situation. It's just a will. And what I'm saying to you guys, okay, it ain't, well, the legacy airline saying, well, we're going to build more flights, we build more hotels, and the hotels are saying, well, develop more hotels, we bring more airlines. That is not the issue. Most major tourist destination, it's about why am I going to that destination? What is that attraction? Why are people going there? And until we solve that secret sauce as a destination, the argument isn't more hotel room for the airlift. We can literally negotiate with air carriers to be able to bring this direct flight from major cities into St. Croix. I've heard the horror story of some of my colleagues in this room, what they had to go through to get here. It's insane. Guys, we gotta fix this because nobody's gonna wanna come. Let's be honest, nobody's gonna wanna come if they have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get here at the time. No, they're not going to come. So this is critical. And I want to thank you, Chairman Willard John, and for the efforts that the Port Authority is making for the modernization of the two airports. I want to thank you, Craig, for your expertise and knowledge in the maritime space. Mark Jaffe and your support and Radney's support to build this into a hub. Randy's headquarters for the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce is in Industry City. You need to see this thing. It's incredible. By virtue of our partner, when Virgin Islands Company want to access the New York tri-state market, he facilitates it. Mark facilitates it. So we have some great partnerships. John, thank you for continue to do what you do and believe in, and the Newburgh Project. And of course, Richard, thank you so much for what you're doing. Any questions? William Bolke Jr., the president of Bolke Airways, he was supposed to be here. He did tell me if something comes up, he has to fly because he's busy. He was supposed to be, but he obviously is not here. But please, any questions for our panelists in terms of what you heard so far in terms of maritime and air transportation for the territory? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you so much for supporting this panel discussion. And I guess at this point, we are going to break for lunch, because I think it's that time. The last panel group is travel and tourism. That's going to be a big group. There's different moving parts in terms of that industry group. Carolyn, anything I might forgetting, please? Okay. You're invited. So there's the Diageo reception at Diageo tomorrow from 4 to 6. You're invited. David Johnson has kindly agreed to give a tour of the refinery. And I feel like I'm forgetting something. Is there enough? Yeah.
Thank you all so much. So obviously, if you are from the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Croix in particular, you've been to Diageo before. What makes tomorrow's reception so important and so different is the interim director for what is known as the BEST program, which is Black Executive Student Training Program. She will be here with us, and they're the ones that are hosting in conjunction with Diageo this VIP reception. The BEST program has some really exciting announcements they're going to be making that are going to really help and impact the lives of the students of the U.S. Virgin Islands. Of course, St. Croix in particular, all of the Virgin Islands in general. So there will be a sponsorship opportunity, or rather donation opportunity while you're there, and any funds raised are going to directly benefit these students. So to find out about the program, what it's doing nationally, and why it's so excited about the U.S. Virgin Islands, I really invite you to tell any of your colleagues, anybody in the business field, regardless of what field of business it is, please attend tomorrow from 4 to 6.
And tomorrow, Senate President Will Francis is going to host the Taiwanese delegation, and so you are also invited for that presentation at the Senate, at the Legislature building tomorrow. And the governor is also going to host receiving the Taiwan delegation. They're going to arrive today at around 2:30. They're going to be staying here at the hotel. But we're going to have a busy day tomorrow. So you're going to have Government House, the governor receiving the delegation, Senator Francis also receiving the delegation. You have David Johnson and the oil refinery tour. I'm looking forward to that because I always drive by it for forever and don't know what it looks like on the inside. And then, of course, ending the day with the Diageo reception as well. So if you're interested in any of those things tomorrow, please let us know, because we have to submit today. We got to submit all the names today in advance for security reasons. So please give us your name so we know, so you'll be a part of that. Thank you so much. Enjoy lunch, and we come back this way for the travel and tourism panel discussion. Thank you so much.
No. I got you. We got me on the